right, my beautiful friends. We have just pressed the Let's Go Live button, and we're excited to be here with you on this incredible Friday. Hopefully, these tubes connect themselves all across the fruited plain so we can go ahead and get started, because we've got a great live stream planned ahead, a bunch of stuff we're going to dig into today. We are going to start the day off with a little bit of a preview on what's coming up, but we're taking our attention over to the January 6th case, because there were a couple updates from Judge Tanya Chutkan that are going to be interesting when this ultimately comes down. And so there are a couple items I want to share with you. First and foremost, we have already spoken about Jack's giant book report, his 165 pager that he dropped for all of America to read as part of his and Judge Chutkan's election interference collusion. But there's also an appendix. So that 165 pager was just the tip of the iceberg. There was a whole lot more. And now Judge Chutkan is intending to release that. So we're going to see what's inside this appendix, part of the continuing October surprise. But we'll see what Trump said, because they did not want this coming out. They submitted this. There was an objection, or a proposal rather, for redactions, so that when this appendix does get published, we don't get to read a lot of it. So we'll see what Trump's objections were, talking about safety and other things. And then Chutkan right away just said, I don't really care what your objections are, Trump. It's coming out. But she did something interesting and stayed the release of the appendix for 7 days. And so we're going to see whether Trump takes this up on appeal or how he's going to pursue this. But the idea is this report will be coming out in about 7 days, and that's going to be perfect, because it will be even closer to the election, just as they want. So we've also got clips from Mayorkas. We've spent some time here going through that Afghan national who was apparently supporting ISIS and working and sending them money, sending his family back over there, and so on and so forth. Well, turns out there's more to that story as well. And apparently Mayorkas got asked about this. And was this guy a CIA asset? Did you guys know about him? And what was he doing here? Why did you bring him over if he was going to be planning an election day attack and working with his brother and the rest of some ISIS compadres to come and kill a bunch of Americans? Well, we'll listen to what Mayorkas has to say about that before we look at what Mayorkas was up to right as the hurricane was hitting, because this man had a fever, and the only solution is sushi and shoes. Alejandro Mayorkas was seen going shopping all over the place as the hurricane was obliterating people. You see him. Nobu? Is that a nice thing? Probably. Nobu looks like a nice bag. Looks like a nice, brand. I don't know. Here's another one. While that was happening, he needed to get some new shoes or something. And so we'll read through this and see what's going on with it before we turn our attention over to what's happening in Michigan, because we've got a very important swing state. And we talked about this morning on our members only stream on YouTube and on Locals, where we're asking about the polls, spending a lot of time looking at the election betting odds and other things. And Michigan is close. Whew. So is Wisconsin. It's like even, according to the Emerson poll that we looked at this morning. But now Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, the same one who made that video, if you don't certify the election, we're going to come for you. And there was that Disney music, like, it's a small world after all. She's like, we're going to come and murder your whole family if you don't certify this election. I was like, what? Who is this weird lady? Anyways, she's part of the Democrat triad up there with Dana Nessel and Big Gretch Rona, who was seen earlier today feeding some strange influencer person Doritos in the mouth, right in the mouth. And so she's getting a lawsuit from the RNC, the Republican National Party, and it's about the Yokava ballots. Remember, these are the ballots that are out of state. And they're doing very sneaky things with these all across the country, including trying not to match the actual numbers. If you fill out an out-of-county or an out-of-state ballot, the idea is you put your driver's license license number on there. So when it comes across and lands stateside, we can rectify it, match it up with some database to confirm you are who you say you are. And what they're doing in Pennsylvania and elsewhere is just to say, we don't need to check anything, right? It's just take their word for it, essentially, because the databases don't match or whatever their excuse is. So they're trying that shenanigan here in Michigan. We've already covered the lawsuits in, I believe, North Carolina. They were trying it, and definitely in Pennsylvania. So we'll see what's happening here in Michigan. Big Gretch Rona, Jocelyn Benson will not be happy. And then I've got some updates on the other states because there is a lot of election litigation flying around. And we know that some of the stories we covered previously this week were all about election changes that needed to be made on the back of the hurricanes. And so we were seeing if they were going to extend registrations in Georgia and in Florida. And I've got some updates on both of those. And then this was an interesting story from Axios. So coming up, we're going to get into this. It says some top Democrats will not commit to certifying a Trump win. Wow. Well, based on the fact that sometimes Trump says stuff like that, they say that American democracy is over, right? When Trump says, well, I mean, we'll agree to an election outcome if it's a fair outcome. Well, it's complicated about that. Every time Trump says that, meltdown. Everybody's going to die instantly because Trump's not just going to bend over and take whatever the deep state gets him in terms of an election result that's rigged by people like Jocelyn Benson. So now that the Democrats have a candidate called Kamala Harris, now they're going to come out and say, oh, the Russians stole it again or something. And so now they're not committing to a certification. And Raskin has already been the person who's got a history of this, right? He objected back when Trump won the first time in 2016. And now he's saying that Trump's the insurrectionist. Well, they're plotting. They told Axios, well, if Trump won, see this if word, if Trump won a fair and honest election. It's like, what are you talking about? You're running the government. You're running the elections. Jamie, I don't know if they're going to be arrested immediately. I mean, this feels like it's multiple felonies that have been committed. I think Liz Cheney's probably having a meltdown at her home with her father, Dick. So we've got some stuff coming up on there. We've got this clip has just gone hog wild, over 1 million views on X. And it's showing Kamala's trend is not looking good. And they're hitting the panic button. We made a video about that earlier this week. Tons of stories saying, whoa, they're realizing, oh, our candidate's Kamala Harris. That's not good for anybody. So we've got that clip, and we've got some other numbers showing how the Republicans are doing better with the Latinos because they're tired of being called the Latinkses. And so welcome back to the Republican Party. We've got Jamie Raskin, as I mentioned. This is a clip from a little bit earlier where he was explaining, yeah, they may not be able to certify any of this. Barack Obama came out to lecture black men. All right, listen up, black men. Obama has a message for you, okay? You better listen up to it right now, or else something. I don't know. But apparently it's going to be meaningful because Obama's now out doing his little stupid spiel. We'll listen to that. And then Newt Gingrich is going to make an appearance with some insight, as always, before we turn over to Tim Walz. And Doug is apparently now commenting on the beating of his exes. So that's fun. So we'll see what he has to say about that and more. We've got a bunch of great stuff coming up. I'm super glad that you are here and with us. And what we're going to be doing is talking about how we can get a little bit healthier, because, you know, you've seen a lot of those conversations about those weight loss injections and how everybody just loses a ton of weight. They work by lowering blood sugar, they say, and reducing appetite and all those things, very important things. But what if you don't want to take those shots? What if you don't want to go get injections? Well, good news, there's something called lean. Now, the ingredients in lean have been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat, and convert it into energy, curb your appetite, make you not as hungry. But it's not just for the casual dieter who wants to just lose a little bit of weight. It's actually been created for dieters who want to lose 10 or more pounds. And so you can get started, grab some lean, give it a shot, 15% off right there. See, popped right up. 15% off and free rush shipping so you can add lean to your healthy diet. Visit takelean.com, takelean.com. Enter in Robert15 when you check out, Robert15. That's going to be your discount at takelean.com. Robert15, you're going to save some money, 15% off and free rush shipping, and it's going to be great. So check it out from our friends at BrickHouse Nutrition. Links in the description below. And we appreciate them sponsoring our show and the work that we're doing here today. All right, so let's get into it, my friends, because we've got some other business to attend to, starting with Judge Tanya Chutkan. Judge Chutkan, in the January 6th case, is continuing her election interference collusion with Jack Smith. We know that she's already allowed the publication of Jack's 165-pager, which really wasn't that interesting, actually. Was a lot of the same rehashed J6 insurrection horror stories that we all heard about in Liz Cheney's 8-episode multi-part series that's like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Terrible. But they're still leaking this stuff out and dripping it out. Jack Smith wanted to have this case done at a trial a long time ago. So did Judge Chutkan. The problem is they used a bunch of immune evidence in their fake criminal prosecution that's never been used before, and they got backhanded by the Supreme Court. So now they're doing a slow drip, and they want to continue the slow drip into October because October, surprise, hello, we've got an election just under 3 weeks from now, and they want to exercise maximum influence on the election. DOJ used to have a policy that they didn't do anything, no sudden moves, no filings. If it was going to impact an election, obviously that went out the window with the rest of American historical precedent because of Trump. Now let's see what Trump's people said in this filing. They say, all right, listen, Judge Chutkan, we understand that you're going to release a bunch of stuff, and we object to that. They say, first of all, we submit respectfully, Your Honor, to the court our proposed, we're responding to what you told us to respond to, saying, listen, there should be no further disclosures at this time, Your Honor, of the so-called evidence that Jack Smith's office has unlawfully cherry-picked and mischaracterized during early voting in the presidential election. People are voting right now. In connection with the improper presidential immunity filing that has no basis in criminal procedure or judicial precedent. And by the way, this has been acknowledged. Judge Chutkan even said that the procedure was, I believe, irregular, is the literal word that she used. But it didn't matter because she would give Trump the final word, so we can do all of this irregularly. No problem at all. She also allowed him to file something, an opening brief, which isn't an opening brief because Trump never filed the initial motion on this. They were wanting to submit this big dossier, and it was 4 times, quadruple the size of the standard limits. So there were all sorts of precedent that was shattered on this in order to enable them to be able to do it. Now, Trump says that they maintain his objections from the prior filing based on the overt and inappropriate election interference, violations of longstanding DOJ policy, and the office's previous safety-related representations to you, Judge. Remember that Jack Smith wanted Trump gagged and got him gagged in the J6 case. Then he wanted him gagged in Florida. That didn't work out so well for them there because, as we now know, Jack Smith was illegally appointed and was never confirmed by the Senate, which means he's not a real boy, and he's upset about that. But in the January 6th case, he does get all the benefits of Judge Chutkan, who has been handing him benefit after benefit after benefit in order to weaponize the justice system against Trump. So they said he had to be gagged because this evidence could never be made public or else danger. But then all of a sudden they reversed themselves, and now they're going to release it all publicly, demanding that this all needs to be made part of the public record. Which way is it, Jack? They said potential witnesses could be impacted. Jurors might be persuaded with prejudicial pretrial publicity, all of that. Now that is all out the window. They don't care about any of that. They can publish everything. And then they say stuff like Arizona governor, right? They redact it. Arizona governor 1. Who could that be? I wonder. Great job redacting all of the witness information. Now, if the court, they say to Judge Chutkan in the January 6th case, if this court decides to release additional information related to this filing in the appendix or otherwise, Trump respectfully requests that the court stay that determination for a reasonable period of time so that Trump can evaluate litigation options related to your decision. Signed by Todd Blanche, Emil Bove, John Lauro, Gregory Singer, the A-team, baby, for President Trump. So good stuff there. And Eli Honig, right? They're even referencing that article, which we covered here, which was a great article from that CNN contributor who said, yeah, Jack Smith, this was a cheap shot, right? It totally was. Now, pursuant to the minute entry, Trump has also submitted this filing to Jack's office and to the court for temporary sealing. Trump does not believe continued sealing of today's submission is necessary. So they filed it under seal. Obviously, it's now not sealed because we're reading it. And so Trump is objecting, saying, look, I want my main points reconsidered. We're now even closer to the election. People are actually voting now. So don't release it. So Chutkan takes a look at it and she says, oh, yeah, I know people are voting. Obviously, that's why I'm releasing it. So thanks for confirming that now you know it too. We all know it. That's why they're doing this. So here is the order from the judge. Chutkan responded to Trump. Jack Smith is continuing to want to unseal documents so that they can smear Trump with Jack's literal fake, one-sided, never cross-examined, never confronted materials. It's all going to be published, and then Trump will respond to this after the election. If it were a trial, Trump would be able to cross-examine the evidence that was presented immediately after it was presented. But that's not happening here. It's just a smear job. So Judge Chutkan says, perfect, love this. Been planning this since we lost the immunity decision. Saying the government sought to leave to file under partial seal a motion for immunity determinations and an appendix, right? So they submitted that, they started it. After hearing objections from Trump, the court granted that request with respect to the motion, but reserved judgment with respect to the appendix, saying, yep, the motion's out. We read through the whole thing, but not the appendix. Trump has now filed an opposition, objecting to the unsealing of any part of the appendix as well. Now, as in his previous filing, he identifies no specific substantive objections to the particular proposed redactions. Instead, Trump just maintains his objections from the prior filing to any further disclosures at this time for the same reasons he opposed unsealing the motion, which was Jack's big immunity motion. And he requests that, quote, if the court decides to release this, that they stay this so he can evaluate his litigation options. And so the judge says, okay, well, if it's the same reasons as before, all right, well, then the court determines that the redactions are appropriate, that Jack Smith wanted to submit, and that Trump's blanket objections to further unsealing are without merit. So we're just going to continue to unseal stuff over Trump's objections. As the court has stated previously, Trump's concern with the political consequences of these proceedings is not a cognizable legal prejudice. I don't care about the election, right? And she's made that point throughout this entire case. So accordingly, the government's motion for leave to file is granted. And they're filing this on the public docket. So now we'll be able to see it. The appendix, when it does drop. But the court will grant Trump's request for a stay. So we're not going to see it immediately. So that Trump can, quote, evaluate litigation options. And she's like, what are you going to do? Like appeal my ruling on this? And hereby stays this decision for 7 days, go up to the higher court to get them to mandate that Chutkan not release that. Take that up again. We'll see what Trump's team does. But they are continuing forward. And honestly, I think Judge Chutkan is kind of happy about this. She's like, yeah, I'll give you 7 days because that's going to put us on, well, you know, October 17th. That's perfect. That's just a couple weeks before the election. So they'll be able to then ramp up all the January 6th smear jobs yet again, because that's just what they do. Now, speaking of people who are supposed to be stopping insurrections, but actually are probably causing it, because as we know, Homeland Security Investigations, the Department of Homeland, had agents all over January 6th. And we heard about that. The FBI had confirmed that there were about 8 in the Proud Boys trial, but the defense team there identified many more people, and we suspect that they were, in fact, HSI agents, which were this guy. So the January 6th stuff is very curious because they're not releasing information about this. They're not releasing the Secret Service text messages that just happened to be deleted and all the things. So when we also have another story about an Afghani national that the Biden administration brought into the country after they wrecked 13 American lives during their departure and thousands of others in the disaster of the departure, they brought over an alleged terrorist, or did they? Was that a CIA asset who is now being activated? They're asking questions of Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland, and here's what he said.
Thanks, Green. Mr. Secretary, it's Jackie Heinrich from Fox. I want to ask you about a different story. This Afghan national who was working for the CIA in Afghanistan was arrested for planning an election day terror plot. He was brought to the U.S. after Afghanistan collapsed, your agency says, as part of the SIV program. The State Department is telling us he was not part of the SIV program, which had strenuous vetting. They say he was never issued an SIV or immigrant visa, and DHS paroled him into the U.S. They further expect the court document to be updated to reflect this from the DOJ side. So, Mr. Secretary, how was this man brought into the U.S.? What screening did he undergo? What did he apply for to get here?
Jackie, I'm here in North Carolina communicating with the individuals who are still conducting search and rescue operations. Over 200 people have lost their lives in Hurricane Helene. We have reports that at least 10 individuals have lost their lives as a result
I'm focused on
of
that,
Hurricane Milton. I'd be very pleased to answer your question in a different setting, but we're here to talk about emergencies and the support that we can deliver to people in desperate need. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary, but we're getting conflicting answers from your agency and from the State Department about a man who was arrested for an election day terror plot. How do you not have those answers prepared?
Jackie, that's not what I said. What I said is I'd be pleased to discuss this issue at a different time, but I am here to speak about disasters that have impacted people's lives in real time, and that is a subject that I am addressing today.
Mr. Secretary, can you assure people that appropriate steps have been taken to secure the country against these kinds of threats? Because the outstanding question is whether this man was radicalized before the U.S. government brought him here or afterward. And people should be concerned about that.
Jackie, your persistence in questioning can be matched by my persistence in answers.
All right, we're going to...
Pathetic. So the man's pathetic. He can't answer questions he doesn't want to answer. And he's going to use this emergency as an escape hatch so he doesn't have to answer hard questions about the failures of his own administration, his own agency, which has also, according to many people, failed massively in the response to the hurricanes as well. But as you could see, he was probably a little bit antsy and agitated. He was kind of squirming in his chair there because he really had an itch, man. He needed to go shopping. He just loves his shoes and he needs them immediately. You can see here was Alejandro Mayorkas just shopping around, getting some new shoes, trying to get all flashed out. The photograph says as Floridians were battening down the hatches last weekend, Mayorkas was snapped by a Washington Free Beacon reporter at the pricey menswear store called Sid Marshburn. Wow. So fancy, I've never even heard of it. All right. So, yeah, but Mayorkas knows what it is. So Florida was getting ready to have the beach delivered into their front door, and Mayorkas was out there. Was he getting hurricane shoes? Did he need to go get some hurricane outfit gear? I'm going to have to go address this hurricane. I got to look great to do it. Saving America. All right, so that's Mayorkas. And as we know, the numbers have been ridiculous. Like $20 billion was authorized before going into recess, but $9 billion had already been spent. They spent $4 billion on COVID garbage, even though COVID was declared over a while ago, allegedly. They told us FEMA does not have the funds. He was shopping there, and that reporter saw him getting his nice shoes. And this guy, let's see. Oh, yeah, his shoes. He's probably going to need new ones. Do you think Mayorkas was buying the shoes for him? I don't think so. So there's another image. He's coming out of this place, Nobu. And wow, what's this? The DHS head strutted through the brick and mortar retailer in a smart blue navy polo, light khakis, New Balance tennis shoes, while eyeing more items for his wardrobe. And we don't know, $795 jackets. All right, so they're working very hard to save Americans, and they're trying to look good while they're doing it. So that's our Homeland team out there saving America. All right, so let's turn our attention now, my friends, over to Michigan, because we love ourselves some good election litigation, and we love when the defendant is Jocelyn Benson. Let's get to this one. Jocelyn Benson, not happy. The Secretary of State, who is responsible for a lot of electoral shenanigans with her two BFFs, Big Gretch Rona, the governor, and Dana Nessel, the AG. The same Jocelyn Benson who made that videotape with that Disney music that sounded like she was going to murder an entire neighborhood of people if you don't properly certify your electoral votes. That video, we played it here and we're a little freaked out. She's in charge. She's the referee, the scoreboard keeper, the person who's going to be responsible for ultimately assembling the results of the election. And now she's being sued by the RNC, and she's been busted before. We've read through some of her attempts. She was the same one who attempted to create a presumption of validity for signature requirements in the election manual that said if a signature comes in and you look at it, there's a presumption of validity. Don't think about it. Just, okay, check the rest of the form. It's good. What does that mean? If it's presumed valid, it means you don't check it because you presume that it's valid. That's her. So she's getting sued now. And we've got the Michigan Republican Party and the RNC filing it. And so let's see what's happening out of Michigan. The lawsuit comes with the summons and a bunch of the initial paperwork. But here is what it looks like. Brought by the RNC. They tell us, the Michigan Constitution allows Michigan residents and only Michigan residents to vote, saying every citizen of the United States who has attained the age of 21 years and who has resided in this state 6 months and who meets the requirements of the local law shall be an elector and qualified to vote in any election. The legislature shall define residence. What does that mean? For voting purposes. And so they say, thus, while the right to vote in Michigan is an absolute constitutional right, certain requirements must be met before you can vote. We also know that Congress created the UOCAVA Act, Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, UOCAVA, to ensure that members of the military and other American citizens who live outside the states may register and vote in federal elections, right? It's out of state, let's say out of country votes. UOCAVA provides that a member of the armed forces or an overseas citizen may vote in the state in which they previously resided. Now, UOCAVA has the effect of partially preempting state residency requirements for some overseas voters. So you don't actually have to be a resident if you qualify under UOCAVA. Now, despite the Constitution's unambiguous adjure that no person may vote in Michigan unless they reside there, pretty clear, the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, has distributed guidance that says the following. A United States citizen who has never resided in the United States, okay, never resided, but who has a parent, legal guardian, or spouse who was last domiciled in Michigan is eligible to vote in Michigan so long as the citizen has not registered or voted in another state. That's in the manual. So people who've never lived in Michigan, never resided there, can vote. But the Constitution says the opposite of that. Only has resided, but again, UOCAVA preempts that. So they're going to say UOCAVA gives them the right to do that. Let's see. Now, on its face, Chapter 7, which is the part of the manual that is changed, right? And this is where they're getting very sneaky. Okay, you have a Constitution. Then you have statutes that are subordinate to the Constitution. Then what you often have are rules that implement the statutes. And you figure out, it's like the teacher gives you a group assignment. You guys got to turn all of this into us by the end of the whatever. And you say, okay, fine. So then you go back and you implement. Okay, here's the project. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Then we're all going to assemble it. When you get to this section, this is how we're going to approach it. All right. We're all going to do our own bibliographies. Okay. Like those are the implementation of the rules that came from the professor. So we've got, maybe are set by the school, right? So these three different tiers. Well, here, the thing that we're changing are the implementation of the statutes. And this is where they get super sneaky and they change all the requirements. So now in this case, if you've never resided in the U.S., you get to vote. Now, on its face, Chapter 7 extends voter qualifications to individuals who've never resided in Michigan. As a result, certain people who've never resided in Michigan, or even in this country maybe, are registering to vote and voting in Michigan elections. Do they have any stake in Michigan? No. Michigan election officials have registered persons to vote who've never resided in Michigan and have allowed them to vote in state and federal elections. And the state wants people who live there to be impacting the elections. Now, this is a violation of Michigan's constitution, and as applied to the plaintiffs here, the people suing, it dilutes their votes and harms their organizational mission. Because your vote, as long as everybody's vote is fair and legitimate, our votes count for 1.0. But if somebody comes in and votes and they should not be voting legally, they don't have citizenship, they're not supposed to be getting a ballot, and they are, or they're not, the Constitution says you're supposed to be a resident at some point and they've never been, well, it takes your 1.0 to 0.999. And the more that comes in, it dilutes it even more because your share of representation is being diluted by other people seizing it. Moreover, Chapter 7 subjects Cindy Berry, the citizen component of this complaint, to competing obligations, okay? On the one hand, she takes an oath to uphold the Michigan Constitution, but on the other hand, she has to employ the secretary's instructions, which is to just accept people who've never lived or resided in Michigan, or even had a parent who did. Now, the Secretary of State shall develop instructions consistent with this act. So she's like, what do I do? The Constitution says they have to be residents, but the manual says they don't. So the parties are now suing, right? Michigan Republican Party, we know who they are. The RNC is suing. We know what they do. They assist everybody to get people out to vote. We also have confirmation that they've got interests in this. They tell us that counting of ineligible overseas ballots of people who never resided in Michigan will result in an inaccurate tally of the votes. And overseas voters overwhelmingly, right? This is the thing. They overwhelmingly support Democratic candidates. That's the ticker. Yahoo News even wrote an article about this. Could overseas voters ticket winning be the ticket to winning? Leader of Democratic efforts to engage overseas voters, stating that something like 80% of Americans abroad vote Democrat. Oh, that's a fun fact. And I wasn't exactly sure what the reason was for opening up all the Uokava stuff, but it's always structural like that. But apparently that's the data. It's 80% Democrats. That's why, yeah, bring those ballots in. We don't have to check anything. Thus, the counting of the ballots of ineligible overseas voters will disproportionately harm Republicans and undermine Republican candidates. It will also dilute the lawful votes cast by actual people who resided in Michigan. Now, the Republican committees also spend significant resources to preserve voter confidence and turnout. These efforts are harmed when election officials accept absentee voter ballots without verifying residency, as required under the Constitution. Plaintiff Cindy Berry is the clerk for the township of Chesterfield. Berry is sworn to uphold the Constitution, but she's also bound by the manual. So she has tried to reconcile both these things. This says you have to be a resident, but the secretary says you don't. And so now she is seeking a declaration. What are clerks supposed to do here? She's also a registered voter that's going to cast a ballot. And she also voted by absentee ballot in August 2024. And she wants her vote to count. Now, Jocelyn Benson, as we know, one of the worst, is Michigan's Secretary of State, the chief elections officer of the state, responsible for overseeing the conduct. When she instructs clerks on how to apply the law, the clerks are bound to follow the law, or else she'll come after you, man. She'll put that "It's a Small World" music on, and she'll just, her eyes will get even bigger than they already are, and she'll just go nuts on you. Now, defendant Jonathan Brader is the director of elections. He's being sued. The court has jurisdiction. And there is an actual controversy here, all right? The Constitution says every citizen who has resided in this state for 6 months shall be qualified to vote. But the manual is the opposite. It says a U.S. citizen who has never resided in the United States is eligible to vote here. They're incompatible. She's giving rules that are opposite of the Constitution. And everybody's harmed. Now, the instruction injures the plaintiffs. Their votes are diluted, and they don't know what to do. They've got competing instructions. There are injuries here that are ongoing. And so this court needs to grant relief here. Because no absent voter ballots have been tabulated, there are still times to address this problem. And we need to settle this for this election and beyond. Now, some more details on this, zooming in a little bit. Uokava says each state shall permit people out of state to vote. Defines what overseas voters are. Overseas voters is defined in the U.S. Code. Put simply, UOCAVA does not in toto preempt Michigan's residency requirement. Instead, it simply shapes the residency requirement to say that persons who were residents before going overseas must still be allowed to vote, assuming all other qualifications are met. That is, UOCAVA only preempts Michigan's residency requirement to the extent that overseas voters who were last domiciled in Michigan must be allowed to register. In other words, it does not say that persons who never resided in Michigan must be allowed to vote. So in response to UOCAVA, the Michigan then, so the feds passed this overarching law, then Michigan came back out, and they passed this statute. It provides a spouse or dependent of an overseas voter who is a citizen of the United States and who is accompanying that overseas voter and is not a qualified or registered elector anywhere else in the United States may apply for an absent ballot, even though the spouse or dependent is not a qualified elector of the state. So that is contrary to the Constitution, right? So they actually passed a statute that's also unconstitutional, which requires that every voter be a resident. And further, this is even broader than UOCAVA, which simply requires that voters who were residents of Michigan before going overseas be permitted to vote in Michigan. So in short then, that statute is also contrary to the Constitution, and that has not been preempted by any federal law. And so that provision is also constitutional. So it sounds like there's an election manual provision that they're unhappy with, and there's a state statute that they're unhappy with. So federal law partially preempts the Constitution's residency requirement, so UOCAVA overrides that for overseas voters to whom UOCAVA provides the right to vote. But as discussed above, it does not completely preempt the residency. It just states that a person may continue to vote in Michigan if they previously resided there. But if they never resided there, they don't get the right to vote. Now, it only extends voter eligibility. If you had it, it extends it, but it doesn't create a new class of voters who may vote in Michigan, even though they've never resided there. And so it does not preempt the Constitution. And so here are the violations. They say Chapter 7 violates the Constitution. She has to perform the duties of conducting the election, and her instructions are binding. But her instructions are contrary to the Constitution, which says every citizen who has resided in this state for 6 months. Now, while it's true that UOCAVA has preempted some state laws to prevent overseas voters and absent uniformed services voters, it does not extend to people who've never resided in Michigan. And the Secretary cannot defend her unconstitutional instruction by arguing that this statute, which is also unconstitutional, by the way, by saying that allows her to do this because that statute permits a spouse or a dependent of an overseas voter to vote, even though they're not qualified to do that. That goes even further than UOCAVA by just shoehorning in a spouse or a dependent, right? So wife or kids, even though they've never lived there. So it does not have the force of federal preemption because it's opposed to the Constitution, the state Constitution. It can't carry protection under UOCAVA, so it also has to go. For another, it's elementary that statutory law may not override constitutional law. That's like basic 101. Now, to the extent that there is a conflict between the statute and the constitutional law, the statute has to go bye-bye. And when faced with two incompatible laws, the Secretary has to enforce the Constitution. That's the structure, the hierarchy. Now here, the Secretary has ignored the Constitution and in favor is supporting that law. She's done that in error by sending ballots to and accepting ballots from overseas voters who have never resided in Michigan. They are facilitating ongoing violations of the Constitution. And so as applied here, Plaintiff Barry is at a crossroads. What does she do? Does she follow the Constitution or does she follow the instructions? Time will tell and the court will decide. Now, the Constitution, as we know, talks about residency. And so the claim here is there's a dissonance between the Constitution and the statutes and the manual. So they want injunctive and declaratory relief. They want the court to come in and tell them what the appropriate decision is. A current and ripe case for controversy exists here. and the balance of the harm weigh in favor of stopping Jocelyn Benson. To not stop these unlawful directives that go against the Constitution, such as the Secretary's instructions, would allow a single state officer to circumvent and essentially amend valid and enforceable constitutional mandates on the same subject. That is certainly not in the public's interest, nor would the public be harmed by ensuring that each absent voter ballot originated from and was intended to be completed as required under the Constitution. And so therefore, they want a declaration that Jocelyn Benson's instructions from her election manual, where she interpreted that statute to say that a U.S. citizen who has never resided in the United States, but who has a parent, legal guardian, or spouse who was last domiciled in Michigan, is eligible to vote so long as the citizen is not registered or voted in any other state. So Jocelyn, it sounds like, is latching on to a statute there, right? Mirroring that language a lot. And saying but the statute is also unconstitutional pursuant to RNC's argument. Now, order the secretary to rescind her instruction found in the manual and direct them to circulate a new manual that has that removed, saying that they're not eligible to vote. Stop the secretary from accepting any voter registration forms in any format until they can confirm residency or UOCAVA status, one of the two. And order the secretary to take all steps to remedy the harms caused by her unconstitutional actions. Issue all the necessary directives to reject those ballots. Update the public-facing websites and voter registration portals to say those are not acceptable. Update all necessary voter registration forms and reject the ballots that are cast by the overseas voters who never resided in Michigan. And saying, including ballots of overseas voters who submitted a federal postcard application or a write-in absentee ballot, checking the box, I've never lived in the United States. If they check that box, doesn't count. In the alternative, direct Jocelyn Benson to segregate the ballots by overseas voters who never resided in Michigan, including ballots of overseas voters who submitted the postcard, so that we may ascertain the scope of what these buckets look like. Signed by these attorneys, Brandon L. Debus and Charles R. Spies. They're in Washington, D.C. and in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So an interesting filing. And Jocelyn Benson has a little bit more teeth than I suspected at the start of this, because they did identify another statute that has language that she's mirroring in many ways. But the problem with all of that is that it doesn't comport with the Constitution. And we've seen this happen time and time again. The Constitution gets usurped, not amended. They just implement stuff that will give them tactical advantages, and then boom, it's exploited by Jocelyn Benson. So now she's being sued. We'll see where this goes. What we've experienced before in Michigan is that a lot of the courts have not been ultra favorable to our side on this, but the Constitution seems pretty clear here. Now, will they make any changes before the election wraps up? We will see. Of course, thanks for subscribing as we cover this case and more. Other cases, including in Georgia. Earlier this week, we talked about a lawsuit brought by Democrat groups to extend the registration in Georgia using the hurricane as an excuse. And as you'll see, that objective has been a failure. A federal judge has denied a preliminary injunction requiring the reopening of voter registration in Georgia due to the impact of Hurricane Helene. So that's not going to be happening in Georgia. And some people are upset about this. We're deeply disappointed. We're going to continue to fight relentlessly for access to voter registration and more. Got it. Same thing happened in Florida. They tried this again. The League of Women Voters, still trying to determine if they have superpowers or not. But they also wanted to open registration and extend it in Florida. That got denied as well. So you see the plaintiff's order for a temporary restraining order, motion for a temporary restraining order, has been denied. So signed by the judge, Robert L. Hinkle. So those are some election litigation updates. Of course, we'll be here continuing to cover what's happening in Michigan, elsewhere, and more. And lastly, my friends, we've got one final segment on the day before we see what you have to say about all this on this lovely, lovely Friday. We've got some interesting news. Democrats now saying they may not confirm a Trump victory. The plot continues. We know that everything they've been doing over the last 3.5 years, and if you want to go further than that, all the way back to 2015 when Trump first got into the fray here, they have been working to stop Trump at every turn, including Jamie Raskin. You remember him. He is the big anti-insurrectionist guy that is on the Democratic team, even though in 2016, after Trump won, he was objecting to Trump taking office. Now he is confirming the same. If Trump wins, they may not be too interested in confirming the outcome, which means they should probably be charged by felonies from Fani Willis, right? All right. Now, House Democrats had previously railed against Speaker Johnson for hedging on whether that the GOP-controlled House would certify a Kamala Harris victory, right? Well, we'll see. They slammed Tom Cotton over this too, and everybody over it. Trump comes out. Well, we'll see. If it's free and fair, then yeah. But if the CIA rigs it again, like they did with their 51 letter, and then install Anthony Blinken as their Secretary of State after he colludes with Michael Morell to do that thing, we're not interested in being governed by a fake government that doesn't have the legitimacy of the people. But some of their senior members are playing a similar game now especially that Kamala is going into the gutter in the polls. Now, Democrats are trapped between their deep distrust of Trump and their vigorous denunciation of any election challenges in the year since January 6th, even though the Democrats made many election challenges in the aftermath of Trump. There's videos of them for 20 minutes going on. Too much Democratic voices to listen to for 20 minutes, but it exists. Democratic leaders, however, seem fully prepared to certify a Trump victory. Yeah, right. We'll see. Now, what they're saying, Raskin, the House Oversight Committee ranking member and former J6 committee member who objected to Trump's electors in 2017, remember that? He told Axios in an interview, he says, well, if Trump won a free and fair and honest election, then we would obviously accept it. Wait, what? If you said that every time Trump says if, he's undermining the sanctity of our elections. He's once again threatening the peaceful transfer of power. If, right? That's what they say all the time. Are we going to hear Jen Psaki melting down over this? However, Raskin said he definitely doesn't assume that Trump would use free, fair, and honest means to secure a victory, because it might be the Russians or maybe the CIA again. He says Trump is doing whatever he can to try to interfere with the process, whether we're talking about manipulating the Electoral College counts in Nebraska, which is actually changing the structure, which is all lawful, or manipulating the vote count in Georgia, or imposing other kinds of impediments, he says. Similarly, Rep. Jan Schakowsky, a chief deputy who voted to object to Bush's electors, said of Trump, I don't know what kind of shenanigans Trump is planning, saying, we would have to, in any election, make sure all the rules have been followed. Or what? Schakowsky's letter said in a statement that she was proud to join all my Democratic colleagues in certifying the 2020 election and look forward to doing the same in January 2025. Now, House Rules Committee ranking member Jim McGovern, who also objected to Trump in 2017, all of these guys now, said Democrats would certify a Trump victory. He says, well, assuming everything goes the way we expect it to. What do you mean? We have to see how it all happens, says McGovern. All right, he needs to be charged with felonies too and indicted in multiple counties. My expectation is that we would. House Minority Leader Hakeem, who wields a huge influence over his members, says, well, there's little chance of an organized effort to decertify electors. Yeah, right. Which means there's a full plan. That means they have like 150 spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides. No, there's no plan at all. Yes, there is. How many people are working on it right now? Said Jeffries. House Administration Committee ranking member Joe Morell, Jeffries' top deputy on the election, has made similar statements. Now, zooming out, in 2005, Democrats objected to Bush, obviously. In 2017, half a dozen Democrats filed objections to 10 Trump elector slates, but no one from the Senate backed them. This is exactly what Trump's people were doing, okay? And fortunately for the Democrats, they didn't have the FBI, the CIA, and Homeland Security causing a coup, causing an insurrection, causing a riot when this was happening then. Because the Democrats were doing it. It would have made them look bad. So they did it when the Republicans were doing it. Now, in 2021, a majority of House Republicans voted to object to Biden's wins in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Part of a sprawling effort. Raskin said, Democrats don't engage in election fraud and election fabrication. Yes, you do. You're trying to change the rules in all of the states right now. We cover a lawsuit here basically every day lately. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You defrauded the country with your 51 laptop letter. Trump, and then you cooed Joe Biden out of there. Nobody's even voted for Kamala Harris. Election fabrication, this whole candidate is fake, Jamie. Trump and his loyalists are already laying the groundwork to deny Harris a victory, including filing over 100 lawsuits challenging procedures. Good. Democrats, for their part, that's great. That's good news. Shout out to the Republicans. Glad they've got some attorneys this cycle. Democrats, for their part, may challenge a Trump win in court, but likely wouldn't take that fight all the way to Congress, said Benny Thompson, who was the chairman of the January 6th committee. Thompson argued that there are enough provisions in law so that losers who feel aggrieved in their loss can take it to court. Now, I expect we would do as we did in 2016, says Dan Kildee, a member of Jeffrey's team, says, while disappointed with the outcome and despite a handful of outliers making a statement, we did not object then. We would now object, nor now would we object to the result of a Democratic election, But what if Putin comes in again? What if Putin comes in and steals it again? What are they going to do? Not leave? Here was Raskin before saying, yeah, how about we just don't actually confirm this? Using the 14th Amendment to keep Trump out.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So you see what the plan is. Decertify, not certify, and then they'll keep Trump out. Then there'll be a lot of upset people about that. So then they'll just seize power, keep control indefinitely. They'll blame the Russians. They'll blame the Iranians. They'll blame something, and then they won't leave to save American democracy or something. Now, obviously, they're panicked because the numbers are not looking so good for them. Harry Enton over from CNN, he says, why are Democrats peeing their little pantalones? Well, the race is closer than it was 3 weeks ago. Way too close to call. And as we know, these polls are always low, right? Like they need to be up 5, 6, 7 points in these states because the sleeping Trump vote is always massive. So they're freaked out about it. We released a video earlier this week talking about the panic button. Politico's reporting it. CNN's reporting it. We've got Newt Gingrich coming up. He's talking about it with Mark Halperin. It's good stuff out there. And the Democrats are freaked.
What is with all of this bedwetting among Democrats? Maybe it's an eternal problem, but let's take a look here.
It is.
These are, of course, the Great Lake battleground states, the states we've been focusing in on. If Kamala Harris wins these 3, she most likely gets to 270 electoral votes. Take a look 3 weeks ago. Harris was ahead by 2 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Wisconsin, 3 in Michigan. Look at where we are today. The race is even tighter than it was today. It's a 1-point advantage in Pennsylvania, 1 in Wisconsin, 1 in Michigan. Look, that's limited movement, but in a year in which this race has been so static, if we're talking 1-point movement, 1-point movement, 2-point movements, and we see movements in all 3, this is the type of thing that, at least in the public polling, makes Democrats worried. And I think that the public polling in this case is reflected in some of that internal polling, some of that reporting that suggests that these Great Lake battleground states have certainly tightened a lot, where at this point they are way too close to call.
It is what you call a trend.
It is
when
a trend.
You see something like this over several states. When you compare this to 4 years ago, what does it look like?
Yeah, so let's take a look, and we're going to look at an average across these three states, right?
That.
Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. An average on October 11th. What do you see? Well, if you look 8 years ago, Hillary Clinton was way out in front in an average of these three. She was up by 8. You go 4 years ago, Joe Biden was up by an average of 7 points across these three Great Lake battleground states. You come today, it's just a 1 point advantage for Kamala Harris across these three Great Lake battleground states. So Kamala Harris, at least in the polling, is doing considerably worse than Biden or Clinton. And of course, Clinton lost in all three of these states, and Joe Biden barely won in all three of these states.
Right.
So when you see Harris up by
won.
just a point across these three, I think that this is really the type of thing that gets Democrats really to worry, John, because the simple fact is Kamala Harris is doing considerably worse than either Biden or Clinton was.
Yeah, at this number, what you start hoping for is somehow that the polls
are actually right this time around?
Are right this time and doing a better job. And that's a little bit of a thin reed to base your hope on. There may be some other reasons in general why Democrats are more worried.
Yeah, so I think it just comes down to the fact that Democrats are more worried about a Donald Trump presidency than Trump supporters are about a Kamala Harris presidency. So angry if the opposing candidate wins. 52% of Harris voters say they'd be angry if Donald Trump won, versus just 42% of Trump voters who say they'd be angry if Kamala Harris was. So I think this is more of a bigger, larger picture. It's not just that the polls are tightening. I think it's just that Democrats, John, are more worried in general about a Donald Trump presidency than the reverse in this particular situation.
Well, Democrats are hysterical people. They are upset about everything. Everything is an immediate emergency. Everybody has to stop and do whatever the government tells them to do. They're just panicky people. It's kind of in their DNA, I think. But this, I think, actually is a better thing for them. This number here, that's good, right? That kind of is like fire. Like Trump voters. My friends, there's only 42% of us out there who would be upset if Kamala wins. We got to bump those numbers up. All right. That should be like 99%. All right. So I don't know what we need to do here to bump those numbers up, but I'm going to be furious if Kamala wins. Okay. So let's go. All right. Bump those numbers up. Get your friends a little agitated, a little bit more mad. All right. I don't know. I'm a little upset about that. Because it's like do or die, baby. If Kamala comes in, it's not good. It's not going to be good. So this is fight, right? This is like fight energy. The Democrats are more fired up than we are. It's ridiculous. Harris voters are more emotionally invested. All right. You can be uninvested after the election. We got 3 weeks, so let's get invested. All right. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Now, here's another report from PO Strategies. Says one major reason party ID is now essentially tied is due to a fairly dramatic shift in partisan identification among Hispanic voters. 2 years ago, Democrats had a 23-point advantage with Hispanics on party ID. Now, that advantage has been cut in half and stands at just 12 points. And we talked about this morning on our Members Only stream, how they just presume that everybody is going to be like them indefinitely. And we're asking ourselves, do the Latinos prefer to be called Latinxes? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't really know. Maybe. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're not interested in universal 9-month abortions for everybody all the time, or having their kids' genitals removed, stuff like that. So they treat people like trading cards and just presume that everybody is going to vote Democratic indefinitely, but their party has gone insane. So it's backfiring bigly. So what have they done to remedy some of these race relations? Well, Barack Obama's coming out. He's got a message for black men out there. So listen up, black men. Obama says it's not acceptable to sit out this election. He's a black man, so you better listen to him or else. It's not acceptable. So I don't know what the repercussions are going to be, but Obama has spoken. So I guess that means something. I don't know. Obama came out and on Thursday admonished black men who are hesitating to back Vice President Biden. Unbelievable. How could black men do such a thing? Telling them it's not acceptable. to sit out this election and suggesting that they might be reluctant to vote for Harris because she's a woman. Wow. He's calling black men misogynists too. That's an interesting approach. Let's see how it works out for him. The striking comments by Obama made to a small group of voters in a surprise stop at a local. That's funny that CNN called it surprise striking. It is pretty striking. That's for sure. Wow. We're part of a more forceful campaign message. At a rally in the city later that evening, Obama issued some of the most searing public criticisms of Trump. He says, you're thinking about sitting out or supporting someone like Trump, who has a history of denigrating you? When has Trump denigrated black men ever? Because you think it's a sign of strength? Because that's what being a man is, putting women down? When has Trump done that? Obama said. Only Rosie O'Donnell, by the way, which is hilarious. That's not acceptable, says Obama. You hear him, black men out there? Ooh, man. You guys are going to be in so much trouble if you don't listen to him. It's not acceptable. I don't know what's going to happen, but well, I'm sure we'll find out. That problem, he suggested, was less complicated than some are making it out to be, and that it comes down to sexism, too. You're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses, Obama told the black men. I've got a problem with that, Obama said, because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly to you, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. And their polls must be brutal, okay? This is like your father coming in and like lecturing, I'm really disappointed in you, and I can't believe that you're not. I mean, get out of here. You're not my dad. Get out of here. As CNN reported, Harris has been focused on turning out black men even before she took over. I got to tell you, man, if somebody came and talked to me like that and was like, listen, Rob, like you're a white man and I'm disappointed in you. And it's unacceptable as a white man that you don't go vote for a woman because you're a white man. And what are you, some sort of a misogynist who can't support a strong woman? Like, what the heck? Who the hell is it? I would never vote for that person or anything that that person told me to vote for ever. And I would excommunicate him from my political life. But the Democrats have a different approach to this. It's strange. Trying to get the enthusiasm there for President Joe Biden. He says the concern is that the couch is going to win. One person close to the Harris team told CNN, we need to make sure that black men, Hispanic men don't sit on the couch, which is racist. Are they calling them like lazy? Oh my gosh, I can't believe Kamala Harris's team is calling black men and Hispanic men lazy misogynists who just sit on the couch. I guess, I don't know what they're doing on the couch all day long. Because if they don't vote at all, then that's a vote for him. Now, Harris will travel to Detroit next week. Maybe she'll lecture black men too, for a Tuesday radio town hall hosted by nationally syndicated co-host Charlemagne the God. Oh, that's good. Maybe Charlemagne can talk about what his opinion is about Obama lecturing him, who announced the plan on Friday morning. He has millions of followers across digital platforms. During an hour-long conversation, they're going to talk about that. That's going to be good. It's going to be a disaster. I can't wait. As Harris's campaign works to recreate this, a multiracial Biden coalition, campaign operatives are offering similar directives out there, saying they're trying to work with private voters. Remember, you were raised by a strong black woman. A strong black woman took care of you, fed you, gave you an opportunity, said West to the NAACP audience. This is crazy. So they're saying Kamala's your mama? I think that's the argument. What? In a recording of the meeting obtained by CNN last month in Milwaukee, Harris's brother-in-law, called Anthony West, Harris's brother, quietly attended a local meeting of the NAACP, a technically nonpartisan group. Yeah, technically. Give me a break. Whose members are filled with influential, mostly Democratic state activists and organizers. In a recording of the meeting, he made the case for Harris in strong terms. Remember, you were raised by a strong black woman. A strong black woman took care of you, fed you, gave you an opportunity in life. And Kamala is a strong black woman. She doesn't have any kids that she raised, gave birth to. I mean, Doug's kids, I guess. But what we have here, I think, is them making the argument that Kamala is your mama, which is a strange argument to make. It's like, what if somebody said Trump is, you were raised by a strong white man, and Trump is a strong white man, and so you should support him for that, or something. It's really weird. Now, that's Harris's brother-in-law? All right. Now, at the rally, Obama delivered his most personal, furious indictment yet of Trump, talking about changing diapers and stuff. It was pretty pathetic. He said, "I'm not looking for applause now. They dragged Obama out. They must be hurting so badly. It's wild that they're actually lecturing everybody now." Obama also sought to push back against an argument at the core of Trump's campaign. Obama constantly described Trump as greedy and duplicitous. All right. Okay. Anyway, so that's Obama. You can tell they're hurting when they're dragging out Obama and they're making the Kamala is your mama arguments in behind closed doors. Kamala mama in the House. All right. Here is Newt Gingrich and Mark Halperin talking about the state of the race. Let's listen to these two gray hairs with some election experience explain what's happening.
All right. Look, I think that Kamala Harris has a number of big problems. One is that the two hurricanes, particularly the total disaster in North Carolina, and the reality of war in the Middle East and the reality of war in Ukraine and the reality of 20 million illegal immigrants, including increasing attention to the people coming in, the organized criminals coming in from Venezuela. All of that, I think, puts her at a difficulty because while she might be an acceptable candidate in a period of peace and prosperity, if you need a strong commander-in-chief at a time that the country is in danger, I think that she fails at almost every grounds, including just body language. I mean, she's not capable of communicating how, in a way that most people would think, oh yeah, that I can see her in a real crisis doing something. I think second.
And let's just pause right there because I have a great clip to share on that point. And this, I don't think, could be a better example of what Newt is talking about here. Kamala was in Arizona. I believe this is a clip from this. Newt mentioned her body language, and it is ridiculous. Here's an example.
As though it is a sign of weakness to have empathy. In the Senate, well, it was late into the night, and in the Senate, you walk onto the Senate floor, and there are these big wooden ornate doors, and those ornate doors opened. And John McCain came out. He's going after me. And I'm going back after him. I'm going back after him. And that was it. And this is what the public saw. And then I step onto the floor of the well of the Senate later that day. We had votes. And I passed by John McCain. And he looks at me and he says, "Kid, come over here. You're going to make a great senator."
Okay, let's go back to Newt Gingrich. He's right. I don't know what she's thinking.
And she's really hurt by her record in ways that are weird. The fact that she has apparently not attended any of the hurricane briefings for 4 years, the fact that Governor DeSantis said the other day that she never called during any of the hurricanes in the years she was vice president until now, that it's a campaign issue. All of that's just a reminder to people that in a lot of ways, she was not a serious person. She didn't do her job. She didn't do her homework. She didn't do the grinding daily things you have to do to be successful at the top. And then third, and I'm partly influenced by watching Saturday Night Live, which has the most brilliant rendition of her I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was good.
But I'm also influenced by just watching her. I think, and I suspect you and I disagree a little bit about this, I think the dual disaster that she did badly on her own on 60 Minutes, and people were just tearing her apart the next day.
Yeah,
Hugh Hewitt in particular just was astonishing,
like this.
And how much he took apart that interview. But then the secondary story, which you and I agree that 60 Minutes has always had a tradition of editing cheerfully, which is why I refused to go on. I told him years ago, I said, I'll be glad to come on if it's unedited tape, but I will not come on if you're going to edit it.
Wild.
And they said, well, you're not coming on then. But given the mood of the country about the way the media has decayed, to have the two, and the both versions are now out, to have the totally incoherent version of her answering, followed by the edited CBS version of her answering, is just one more blow at two levels. One is it reminds everybody that the media who they dislike is totally for her.
Yep.
And two, it gives everybody a chance to see these two comparative explanations, and is just a further reminder of how incoherent she's capable of being when she's on her own. So my guess is, and again, as you know, I was wrong about the red wave in 2022. I'm cheerfully willing to accept that there are moments I've misunderstood this stuff. But my guess is that we're in the early stages of watching her collapse, and that given the objective, larger realities that surround her. One last comment, which I know you wrote me back about today. My hunch as a historian and occasional novelist is that sometime in the last 2 weeks, Joe and Jill looked at each other and thought, wouldn't it be a great legacy if Joe's the only guy ever to beat Trump? And I think the stuff he's done to undermine her in the last 10 days is pretty amazing, and I don't think it's an accident.
Yikes. All right, so great stuff. Newt is such an interesting, thoughtful, deep thinker. So we're happy that he's seeing it that way, because I think he's right. I think Kamala is collapsing. I think that really she had a facade. It was like a bubble. You see it, in the stock markets or in the housing markets or in anything, crypto markets, right? It's a big bubble, but eventually the bubble works itself out. And the Democrats are starting to realize who their candidate ultimately is. They've got Kamala and Walz. Okay, here is Walz now. He is being interviewed by ABC, and apparently he's talking about misinformation in grocery stores or something.
And let's talk about the economy. That is the top issue for voters out there. 74% of voters said the past year they've had to cut back on groceries because of the rising costs, of course. And a lot of those voters, they're concerned that they cast their vote for Kamala Harris, but she's responsible for that. Yeah. So how do you reach those voters? What do you say to those voters who may blame her for the economy right now?
Yeah, folks in the middle. Well, we talk to them about what are the policies that are going to make a difference. And we see some of the data, but data doesn't impact people in their daily lives. Go into the grocery store and you see false information, whether it's bird flu impacting eggs. But the reality for most people is if those costs are up, they want to know what you're going to do about it. I think that's why she's focusing on making sure whether it's home ownership more affordable, tax cuts for the middle class, and let's just be candid about this. There's price gouging piece of this.
And let's talk.
Okay, so he was going to go into price gouging and go after the companies. Everybody's already universally condemned that idea. She's going to put price controls on. Then we'll have shortages. We'll all be standing in bread lines, just like in communist countries, which Tim Walz is a giant fan of, apparently, brings a bunch of kids over there. Well, that's just one person who is in their party at the top of the ticket. They also have the Mr. First Man, First Gentleman, something that might be if Kamala wins, God forbid. And we have some interesting questions for him. Obviously, Doug Emhoff is this guy, and we read through some litigation from his prior law firm where apparently he hired a trophy secretary, somebody called Cat Y'all, and everybody wanted to get them a Cat Y'all, you know what I'm saying? And then apparently he hit some woman in Paris sometime when she was flirting with someone totally innocently. She's, hey, where's our car? Here's my ticket. Who are you talking to? Ah. It's ridiculous. Now there's other people confirming there's more to the story. And so Joe Scarborough on MSNBC sat Doug down and gave him a talking to.
You talked about the debate. Why do you think Donald Trump won't debate her again?
Well, you saw the first debate,
He already debated twice.
Yeah, that's why. Got his ass kicked. Mm-hmm. And so he's afraid that that's going to happen again.
It was a rigged debate.
He's spreading this fog,
with
this fog of misinformation and disinformation and gaslighting, rather than face her again, so we can.
Well, and he's spreading it about you, saying that tabloid stories about your personal life, saying it should be front and center. He's saying it about your wife.
What about it?
And making incredibly crude and lewd suggestions.
Like what?
About her past life. Well, I'm just curious. I know I seem like a very zen, mindful person.
No, you don't.
But I think I'd be pissed off.
No,
and I'm just wondering.
You seem like a psycho.
How do you all stay centered? How do you stay disciplined and not really go off and not really push back hard at these things?
Oh, I love it. It's like it's a how do you do it question. Love those questions. I love asking those questions of people who actually have done cool things, but Doug really hasn't, done much. And rather than a policy question or asking about the actual stories like backhanding a woman or hiring a trophy secretary and abusing women in your office such that one woman blacks out when you're the managing partner and they complain to you and it's just a total disaster there, all those things. Why don't you ask them about that?
We don't have time to be pissed off. We don't have time to focus on it. It's all a distraction. It's designed to try to get us off our game.
Does it get you off your game?
No. All we are doing, all we talk about is this election. We understand the stakes. We understand the responsibility.
What are
we
the
understand
stakes? What are the stakes?
Our very country, our future. What kind of future are we going to have? Who would you like picking the next 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices?
Well
the guy who picked the 3 who overturned Roe v. Wade and want to take away more and more freedom? Or do you want Kamala Harris picking the Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, big fan of Roe versus Wade, this guy, because he didn't want to have that baby with that nanny that he impregnated when he was married with his first wife.
Right.
I mean, this is, she said it. It's not just the most important election of our lifetimes. It's the most important election of our nation's lifetime. So right now, you've seen us before, in the before times. A lot of happy couple talk.
Right.
We love each other dearly. We love being around each other. We enjoy it. We have fun together. Right now, we're deferring that kind of happy couple time because everything we talk about right now is what else can we be doing to win this election?
You're talking about the
Where
states?
else can we go? How can we make sure that we are getting the word out? And that's it, because like I said, the stakes are too high. So all that other stuff you're talking about bounces off. It's just a distraction. We're not going to let it distract us.
All right. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I guess backhanding women and running an abusive law firm and having a history of misogyny, having a bunch of people speak out about your abuse is all a distraction. And I would call it a distraction too if I were an abusive woman beater like Doug. Fortunately, I'm not. And I'm happy about that. But Doug has some questions that he should be answering, and Joe Scarborough didn't ask them. So his history, his past will be ignored and swept under the rug, but we'll be here to continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing, my friends, wherever it is you're watching this. I appreciate you being here. Now, let's see what you have to say about all of this and more, my friends. We covered some great stuff today. If you're just joining us, our first segment was about the January 6th case. Judge Chutkan is now permitting more materials, including this appendix, to be released. And so that will be coming out. We're T-minus 6 days from now. So that was a good segment. We read through her order and what she will be releasing. We made fun of our Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, for buying shoes while people are having their houses exploded due to the hurricanes. Not really an ideal thing to do. Then we talked about a lawsuit by the RNC against Jocelyn Benson. She is being sued, the Secretary of State there, for violating the Constitution, for allowing people to vote without having residency in Michigan in opposition to the Constitution, which is not preempted by federal law. And that was a fun one to read through. And then, of course, we talked about the Democrats' plot to not certify the election if Trump wins. They've been screaming about it for the last 4 years. You're not going to certify an election. You're an anti-American fascist. Then the Democrats are like, well, now that Kamala is not looking so good, we're not going to certify it this time. Isn't that fun? So it has been a great stream, my friends. Very glad to have you here. I want to remind you, if you'd like to join us tomorrow, we have our Eric's House annual virtual fundraiser. It's going to be live. It's going to be at the Eric's House YouTube channel, so check that out. And we can't wait to see you there tomorrow. It's going to be from, whoa, we're raising some serious, whoa, Mama Govea. Back in the lead. Oh, Mama. Who donated that? Oh, my gosh. All right. We got some work to do, my friends. All right. So Mama's back in the lead on the leadership leaderboard. Wow. All right. Amazing. But we're doing this tomorrow. So the time is from 12 Pacific, so 3 p.m. Eastern, to 6 p.m. Eastern or 12 noon to 3 p.m. Pacific time. And it's going to be great. We're going to do a 3-hour stream. We've done this for many years, and it's a lot of fun. Eric's House is an organization. It's a nonprofit that's dedicated to helping people who've lost someone to suicide, overdose, or tragic death. It's unfortunately something that's very common. My family was impacted by it. This is my brother, Eric. Rest in peace, bro. We miss you, but we lost him. And now Eric's House has been formed to help a lot of people get through this same stuff. And so as you can see, 2,000 one-on-one grief support sessions. This group has done like 2,000. That's a lot. 62 peer-led groups. I was involved in these when we first got them started as kind of a men's group, a men's support group, other men who've lost brothers, kids, siblings, fathers, stuff like that, all there. And so they're doing amazing work. And their goal is to reach 1,200 families, to support 1,200 families in the next 18 months. And they can do it, and they can definitely do it with your help. So the link is in the description below if you want to come over and make a donation, or if you can join us tomorrow. Your boy is emceeing it, and I'm going to be hosting it. And so they put together a great presentation. We have a lot of great stuff. And so tomorrow we'll be doing that for 3 hours. Eric's House on YouTube. And we have I think the prior events are up from last year too. But look at this. Wow, a beloved Eric's House member and retreat attendee. My mom hosts retreats, also grief retreats. So, people who've lost a son or a daughter, couples, families who've lost somebody, they come for 3 days, meet a bunch of new people, extract a lot of the pain and leave it there. But anyways, a beloved Eric's House member and retreat attendee is generously donating 10 grand. That's a big one, baby, to be used for training new facilitators. That's amazing. Thank you for that. 10 grand dono from Anonymous. Wow. It's a lot of super chats. But my friends, so thanks for checking it out. You see some other people drop some donos here. And man, Richard is getting a bunch of donos. Man, that's awesome. So let's see. Julie Azuli, Garrett Zito. Hey, what's up? So we just got one here a couple days ago from Leanne. Says, grateful to not have had to face this type of loss. Man, thank you, Leanne, for saying that. Mama says, Leanne, we are grateful that you've not had to experience this as well. Thanks for your donations. Oh my gosh, Jack Mack. Jack Mack is in the house. Jack Mack donated $500. Jack, thank you for that. Oh my goodness. Mama says, that was from Mama G, from Jack. Jack, we will keep your person in our prayers. Thank you for your donation from Mama G for Jack Mack. Jack, thank you so much. What an amazing dono. So that's going to go to some really good stuff. And there's also, by the way, Jack, thanks again for that, man. Really, really nice. V is Never Silent also sent in an amazing dono. Says, V is Never Silent. Thank you for your donation. We will make good use of it by supporting the people in need. That's my mama. My mama's out there saying, what's up? Hey, Chris T. Thank you, Chris. Says, Chris T, thank you so much for your dono from Mama G. Thank you, Chris. $100 coming in from Chris T. You guys are awesome. Hey, here's one from David DeSell, Dog Digger. Tell Mama G she's doing a great job. So are you. Thank you for that, David DeSell. So this is amazing. You guys are just the best. We had some other love coming in from Leanne. This one, Michael Zito and Roberta Zito, they send one in memory of Garrett Zito. Peace. Man, peace for that. And we remember Garrett here too. Julie made a dono to Richard, says, love you guys so much. Thank you, Julie, for that one. Pierce Johnson, another nice one for Richard. Richard's getting some donos. Shout out to Richard. Richard, this is a big one. From Maura and Bob. Maura and Bob say, good luck with this fundraiser and this amazing work. Garrett is always in our hearts, man. We miss Garrett too. Shout out to Garrett. Rest in peace. Hey, Eric Manfra sent one in showing support of Richard Zato. Amazing. Richard's supporters coming out in memory of Garrett, Dan, Federico. What's up, Richard? Bringing in some love in the house. Kathy Wedgwood sent one into Madison saying, in memory of Alex, I'm so grateful, so thankful for Eric's House. I was in a very dark place when Alex died by suicide. They brought me back to light. Love you all. Yeah, Eric, that's what happens, man. So if you know anybody in a position like this, if you can't make a dono, but you know anybody who needs help, well, ericshouse.org is the place to do that. Kata, thank you, Kata. With all my love, sending that one in. We had a $10,000 dono. Woo! We got the Cito family in the house from Phyllis Mirabella. Sent in a dono, an anonymous dono for another one from Richard. Man, Richard's crew's coming out in full. Karen Kirby, what's up? Laura Pagano is in the house. Says, you are one amazing woman, honored to help and support your mission and to help others. Miriam Silverman is in the house. Mary Robinson, man, so many good things. Hey, it's Knox Bierman. What's up, Knox? Knox Bierman is in the house. Sending in a dono to Constance. Knox, you're awesome. Donating to Constance. Knox Bierman in the house. Thank you, Knox, for that one. Sent that one in. We know Knox. She's a defense attorney in Texas. She's amazing. Mara Dold is in the house. Sending in a dono for Richard. That's awesome. And L. Hey, L. Thank you, L, for sending this one in. A $5 dono coming in the house says, fear not, for I am with you. Isaiah 41:10. That's a good one. That is a good one. So, my friends, man, we're 23% to the $70,000 goal, which is just outstanding. And so we're going to be back here tomorrow all day long, baby, 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. I would love it if you joined us. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to have a great 3-hour live stream tomorrow, and it's going to be a great presentation. So thanks for those, my friends. You guys are awesome. Now, there were some other donos that came in, and we're grateful for these. Knox Bierman, speaking of Knox, that's Libra Law. Thank you, Knox. Says, happy Friday, all. My hubby and daughter and her hubby participated in their local chili cook-off last weekend in Cypress, Texas. She reports that at least 4 booths were decorated in the Trump Vance colors. That's good news. And I'm sure their chili was amazing. How'd they do? Was it good? Sure, it was amazing. I love chili. It's great. Hey, thank you for that, Knox. And thanks for the donos over at Eric's house. Very, very grateful to have you there. Hey, what's going on? Manda Girl says, Rob, I was watching this morning show in front of a friend this morning, and she wanted to know who I was listening to. I said, watching the Watchers. So, story short, I ended up sharing your YouTube page with her. She's the first person I've been able to get you a new follower. Manda! Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. That's honestly how this show grows, because YouTube doesn't love us that much. So we appreciate that. That's awesome. And hey, shout out to friend of Manda. Hopefully you're watching right now and enjoying the show. We're glad you're here. First day's the hardest. It gets easier from there, Trust me on it. Hey, what's up? Elvis of Dallas. Bringing in membos. Thank you, Elvis of Dallas. Look at this. JD's coming in. Ralph L is coming in. We got Robert the Great. It's a great name. We got Nick is here and Nutter Brother. Gifted membos from our friend Elvis of Dallas. Thank you, Elvis. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for bringing in 5 new amazing membos. We got this one from Sheila Pooh. Sheila's bringing in 5 membos. Nacho Mama is here. EB Bam, JE, Man of Steel, and is in the house. You see the capitalization is why it changed. What's up? We've got this one from James Butler. James Butler is bringing in 5 new membos as well. Hey, Palmino. Got a membo. Sarah Gray. We got Lizzie for Freedom, Fregio, and Tex Zombie gifted membos courtesy of James Butler in the house. Thank you, James, for bringing them in. What's up? MJ Powell says, I hope the conference went well, Robert. It did. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I'm still tired from it, actually. I got home at like 9:30, which is like way past my bedtime. Then I had to do some prep, and some wrap up some stuff. It was a lot. But it was awesome. I had a great time, have a million new ideas, and my brain feels very full. Had a lot of networking, met some amazing people, feel inspired. I feel great. So I'm glad that I got to go. But I did miss you though. However, I do missing the show, but I'm glad we got a morning stream in. So thanks for checking in on that, MJ. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There's amazing people out there. And there's a lot of people there. I get asked about politics a lot. There's a lot of people there on our side, a lot, and some very good people on our side. So if you don't feel that, I was in a room with some very, 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 very powerful people. And they're on our side. They're really upset with what's happening. And I say that not to like say that I'm in some high status or something like that, like I'm a little peon in this room for now. But there's a lot of really good people who are on our side and love freedom, and they're working hard. So it's encouraging as well. It's supportive. So thanks for that, MJ. What's up, John Carew says, first time catching you live. John, well, that's awesome, man. Thanks for being here. First time. Yeah, first time's the hardest. It gets easier from there. Things get a little bit less weird. So thanks for that, John. Hey, Jesser Bob says, perhaps that fancy manwear store is where Karine got her jacket. Yeah, I want to know where Karine shops so that I can never go there, ever. Because nobody wants to wear the outfit from the Mario Bros movie. Eddie Block Films, what's up, Eddie? 3 months as a member. We love you, Eddie. Eddie also is on Locals, and he's doing a bunch of good streaming. And so thanks, Eddie, for being a membo. Says, vote and do whatever it takes to get to the polls. I couldn't agree with that more. Eddie. It's a big one. Shane, thank you, Shane. Shane Sousa says, like this video, share this video, subscribe this video, hit that notification bell, and select all. Very simple set of instructions. And a great recommendation from Shane. Cheryl says, 100% Dems will use UOCAVA to cheat. There won't be enough time for the Republicans to challenge it in court. Democrat groups vote from abroad. It's well organized. 90+% of these voters are Democrats. 50% of them are registered in swing states. Sounds about right, Cheryl. That's why Republicans, I think, are freaking over this, because they realize that. And we've covered multiple lawsuits here. And this year it's UOCAVA. What's up? Ollie is here, bringing in one new membo. We got HD, got gifted a membo, courtesy of Ollie. Thank you, Ollie, for being a membo and bringing in membos. Runs with scissors. That's dangerous. Says, yo, Rob, longtime listener, first time caller, first and only channel I've ever supported. Easy with the mouse. It's like having my kid hold the flashlight. Well, which part? When I try to not, I know what you're saying, because even I look over here, I'm like, well, that mouse is kind of annoying. And I try to move it, so try to move it. Unless you're talking about the red pen, in which case the red ink is absolutely necessary and critical to the analysis. And so if you're asking for more red ink, I can accommodate. We'll be happy to do that. Thank you for that. Runs with scissors. Be careful. Hey, Michael Manson, 19 months as a membo, says Democrats need to be investigated. It would be nice. I mean, Congress is like investigating them, kind of, but like a real investigation, I think, is what we're after. Yeah. And hopefully Trump gets in there and does that. And cleans house. What's up, Michael Manson? Thanks for being here for 19 months. That's a long time. Almost 2 full babies coming up. Almost 3 full babies. Hey, this old guy says, Hillary Clinton's latest book bombs. Sales are down 80%, lower than the last release. Her latest book, called Something Lost, Something Gained, Lessons on Life, Love, and Liberty, has garnered a tiny fraction of the sales of her last release. It seems that people are bored with Clinton's anti-Trump ramblings. Well, she's also talking about eliminating free speech and stuff. I mean, she's kind of a terrible person. Thanks to this old guy. Rob says, if Trump gets in Jamie Raskin, we'll try to put him out because Democrats will say he caused an insurrection. Congress will move to say Trump can't be president. There's so much garbage that the Democrats will do. You're right. Sheila Poo says, Democrats are the angry party. After all, it was the Republican nominee who the Dems want to see eliminated. Yeah, and then they turn around and say they were Republicans. It's the most logically inconsistent thing you've ever heard. Wait a minute. It was a Trump supporter who wanted to shoot Trump? That's weird. How does that work out? But you're right. They are angry and pretty hysterical. Hey, this old guy says, actually, I'm a bit surprised that Obama hasn't been out earlier in this campaign. I think some parts of the Democratic Party may be hedging their support for Kamala in an attempt to position the party for recovery in the clearly possible event that she loses. Yeah, I don't think Obama and Kamala get along. It's I think what the rumors are, that they don't actually like each other. So I think Obama is now doing this as a panic button. They're out of options. He's like, fine, I guess I'll go out and try to save her butt. But maybe not. Not going to work. Knox shared this one. Kamala's brother-in-law fleeced taxpayers for billions to give to left-wing groups. Wow, that's an MSN story. Wow, maybe world-class champ of fraud. That's interesting. Same guy who says vote for Kamala because she's like your mama, I guess. Trevelyan Gale in the House on YouTube says the racist Trump posthumously pardons the great Jack Johnson, which Obama refused to do for a great brother. So who is the racist? From Trevelyan Gale. Democrats. They are the biggest racists of anybody. They treat people like they're trading cards, not like they're humans. Sheila says Scamala wouldn't have to repeat it 4 times. You know, true story if it was really a true story. You can tell a Democrat's lying because her lips are moving. It's like, no, I swear it happened. Trust me, believe me. Fake. You're right. Rob says Kamala's way to be successful to the top is not praying on her knees. Waldo, 24 months as a membo. That's 2 years, Waldo. Tuned in during the Rittenhouse trial. Now, that was a long time ago, and that was a heck of a trial. Thanks for being here so long, Waldo. We've seen some stuff, man. Got some additional gray hairs on the head. Rob says, if these illegal aliens get amnesty, then say goodbye to the Constitution. Say goodbye to freedom of anything. Weren't the illegals trying to get away from corruption? Why are they bringing it here? Good questions, Rob. This one from Gwen. Hey, Gwen, welcome aboard. If you became a new membo today, don't forget to check out the stream from this morning. We had a great members only stream this morning where we're talking about election stuff and other stuff that we can't get to here. We actually read some good stuff this morning. And we'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream as well. This one from Joe Biden's right side says, Trump 2024, baby. Raskin needs to be thrown out of Congress. He sure does. Sheila Poo, a million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila Poo, for bringing in 5 more membos. Nunya Bitness is here. Bourne is here. Joan Kelly, another yarn, and Sally McCain in the house, courtesy of Sheila Poo. A million hugs to you. We've got this one from Waldo. Waldo's here, bringing in 5 membos. The Lady Kara, Sandy, Colorado, Yo-Yo. We got Ken Kraus, Jacob Swart, all gifted membos, courtesy of Waldo in the house. Good to see you, Waldo. Hey, and Ray Ronk, thank you, Ray. Says, Rob, thank you for your family's steady support in the war against suicide. When we realize that it is a war and not a single battle, we can finally make progress. Suicide is pernicious, and it is a big problem, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. So thanks for saying that, Ray. Yeah, thanks for saying that. We're working hard. We're working hard. Thanks for the support, Ray. Hopefully we see you tomorrow. Jennifer says, Memedom Kingdom tonight after 5 p.m. Check it out, my friends, at the Business Party Podcast. Jennifer is going to be doing Memedom Kingdom. Sounds like a lot of fun. Memedom Kingdom. Business Party Podcast at Jennifer's place. Have a great stream, Jennifer. Tasadaka says, I have never experienced a loved one that is committed suicide. The appropriate politically correct term now is died by suicide. And I'm not saying that to, single you out or anything, but just to say that. However, my sister-in-law was murdered by her boyfriend's ex. Yeah, see, my 14-year-old niece one day didn't make it home from school. We looked for her for a year. Little did we know that they actually had found her remains 50 miles away, 8 weeks. Gosh, it took a year to identify the remains to realize it was my niece. That's horrific, Tasadaka. I'm so sorry for that and your family and, her poor mama. It's just terrible. But yeah, that's what Eric's House does, right? It's not just suicide. It's tragic death. It's somebody's taken from us unexpectedly. Like, there was another father there, as an example, who lost us, I think a son who was, 12, maybe younger than that, 12, in an ATV accident kind of a thing, right? He was just riding on a little thing and something happened, hit wrong, and that was it. It's like, oh my gosh, could you imagine? Riding around with your son on something that's supposed to be fun and he's dead, instantly. Just crazy. Hey, Via's Never Silent says, hey, tight shirt today, Rob. Is it cold in your studio? Just wondering. You seeing a little nip action there, V? What's up? Janelle Vargas says, Hispanic here. I abhor being called Latinx. LOL. As you should. Yeah, it's an offensive name. Latinx? What is that even? I don't know. I'm not Hispanic, and I'm offended for you, Daniel. It's ridiculous. MJ Powell in the house. Look at this, bringing in 10 membos. We got new friends coming in. Bruce Rice Baby, what's up? We got North Star, Rye B, Greg McNeely, is here. Dehydrated Nurse, Lori Voss-Siders, Charles Fritz, Knowledge Tracker. We've got Andy Murrow and JP, gifted membos, courtesy of our friend MJ Powell in the house. It's an MJ party with MJ Powell. Husky Mom says, how do I make a donation under you in honor of our son who would have been 32 this coming April? Man, that's amazing, Husky Mom. So I'm sorry for your loss. And the link is in the comment section. I just dropped it right over there on Locals. Thank you for that, Husky Mom. We appreciate you being over there. Drop those links over there. Ollie says, so BlackRock had ads of assassins and wants the North Carolina mine? From Ollie. Great questions. Chris Solitary 1 gifted 5 membos. Peggy Griffith, Darkin Snyder, Mr. Null's coming in, Villainy Fortitude, and Tyler gifted membos, courtesy of Chris Solitary 1 in the house. Can you get James O'Keefe on your channel someday? I don't know. Does James go on channels? I don't know if he would come on over here. It'd be fun to talk to James, though. Hey, Ray K says less than a month on pins and needles here in Australia, says Ray K. Yeah, I think it's going to be a little, things are going to be a little tense. It's fourth quarter, baby. It's fourth quarter. It's go time. Let's go. We're all going to be a little bit tense for a little bit, but that's why it's so fun. Husky Mom says, hey, just made a small donation in honor and memory of our son, Michael. You are awesome, Husky Mom. Thank you for that. Wow, NY Renal. Wow, check this out. NY Renal MD. What a great donation. Thank you, NY. He says this. So this is from Dr. Tom Z. Zaharakis. Man, that is an awesome last name, Tom. Says, working in the addiction space, I totally appreciate what you've done here. Keep up the good work. There is a great need for medical help due to fentanyl. I opened my 3rd methadone and buprenorphine treatment center this past month. I have seen the changes since 2008 where I am in SoCal. People need medical help, but also spiritual help and mental health. Totally right. So I'm happy to donate to your cause. NY, thank you for that, brother. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate the work that you're doing too. I used to speak at treatment centers around the Valley of Arizona, and I know we need good people in this space because there's a lot of need for it. We've got to help people get well. Thank you, NY, for doing your part and for helping us here. Hey, Husky Mom, there it is. Says, in honor and memory of our son, Michael, that would have turned 32 this coming April. Rest in peace, Michael. And Husky Mom, thanks for being here. Michael Curtis Baker, 1994, rest in peace, 2020. Man, young. All right, so Husky Mom, really glad to have you here. And I appreciate your support today. And I'm sorry for your loss. Rest in peace, Michael. He's up there with my bro. They're hanging out. They're having a good time. They're probably goofing off. All right, what's up? NY says, hey, been super busy, Rob, and haven't been able to catch you live. Working on my 3rd, this is Dr. Renal MD, working on my 3rd opioid treatment facility over here in SoCal. Made a donation to Eric's house, thank you. I am totally committed to helping those with addiction using medical treatment. We can ease addiction withdrawals, but there's no substitute for community and a support structure. So keep up the good work. Thank you, NY. You too, my friend. Really grateful for that. And glad to have you here as a member, as a part of our community. You're awesome. All right. And so, my friends, we are going to check on what is happening over on X. Then we're going to call it a day, go over to Locals and hang out with our membos for a bit, and then call it a day. Now, oh, here's one. Word of the day is mauve. 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 Mauve, not mauve. Mauve. Yeah, I think this is mauve, actually. Kind of looks like this one right here. Okay. I have a mauve colored shirt. Oh, that's really fancy. Here's an actual image of Kamala in Florida. This is fine. Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, everything's fine. James Pepper, what's up? Yeah, there's a strange coincidence here. I'm not sure what's going on right now, but looks like that guy's back. Not good. And Fred Pedamonte, what's up? Sid Marshburn's shoes are, whew, look at those. $17.70 a pair for a pair of shoes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I like nice things, don't get me wrong, but that's a lot. All right, especially for a government official. Our Homeland guy is buying $1,800 shoes. What's up, George? Good to see George. George is over there, over on X as well. But now, my friends, we are going to wrap it up. We're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's going to be a great members only after party. We're going to hang out, debrief, see what the heck is going on. Hey, Rocky says, hey, happy Friday, Rob. And shout out to Runs with Scissors, which is dangerous, by the way. Watching the Watchers is the first channel I've supported as well. Rocky, thanks for that, man. And you've been a really great membo. Great stuff. Always appreciate what you do and how you do it. Thank you, Rocky, man. And I know you've been busy too, brother. So I appreciate you being here. Thanks for jumping in and shouting out Runs with Scissors. We don't condone that, okay? My mom will get very mad about that. She'd be mad about that. Don't tell her, Mama G. Ooh, she's gonna be mad. All right, so my friends, we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'd love to have you come join us. But if we don't see you over there, MJ Powell just brought in 5 more membos. CD117, Peter Roden's coming in. Kayla Renee, what's up? Evan Randall, David Carleon, and Lizzie for Freedom. What's up? Good to see everybody. And thank you for bringing them in, MJ Powell. As we wrap it up, Mauve. I don't know. All right, so my friends, it's been an amazing week. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us as we go through all of this stuff. There's a lot cooking. We're nearly at the finish line. November 5th is just a few short weeks away. And so we're going to stay here, baby. We're going to keep the energy up. We're going to cover the litigation. We're going to follow the court cases. We're going to shine that spotlight. And we appreciate you being here as we do. But for now, we are going to unplug members. We're going to be around back here tomorrow for a members only stream in the morning. And we'd love to see you over there. And of course, on our YouTube party afterwards. But if we don't, it's going to be an amazing weekend. And I hope that you're able to unplug a bit, relax, disconnect from some politics, spend some time with friends, family, the people that you love. Restore your energy levels, rejuvenate your soul and your spirit, because we're coming back here on Monday. And we're going to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. An amazing weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.